Well, today I'm embarking on a new project, and that is to hop up the engine in my 95 Chevrolet K2500 truck with the TBI engine. And I'm going to be ditching that TBI and those sorry swirl port heads in favor for a large diameter HEI ignition and a Holley 670 CFM 4-barrel carb. And so I've had this carb for quite a while, and it just needed a rebuild, so purchased some parts from Summit. I'm going to show you some part numbers and some other things I'm doing here, and then I'm going to talk about the secondary side of the Holley carburetor. Alright, so first thing is I've got two HEI large diameter distributors here, and I've broken both of them down. I'm going to get the best parts out of them and make one good one. Now I want you to check out this kit that I got from Summit. SUM-850030 is a kit to rebuild a large diameter HEI distributor. Comes with all new electronics, new wiring, an adjustable vacuum advance, a rotor, distributor cap, all assembled with the coil, wire retainer. It's really a nice kit. I think it was about probably 80 bucks. And then also comes with a recurve kit. It's got some weights, it's got some springs. All in all, I thought it was a really nice kit. So I purchased that, and then I'm going to be rebuilding out of the best parts of these two. And both of these are in pretty good shape. I'm going to make one good HEI ignition out of it. And that's going to get rid of the small diameter HEI that works with the EFI on that TBI engine that I got. Alright, so then I already had this Holley 670. It's a list 80670. And I had this on my Corvette for a lot of years. And if you see one of my other videos, you notice that I switched over to a quick fuel mechanical secondary carb. And I just wanted to show what I was doing here, and then I'm going to talk about that secondary. I was going to talk about how to check out a secondary and make sure it's opening. And so first of all, ordered a renew kit for this. It actually came as a trick kit. Holley part number 370935. It says renew kit there on the bottom, but it actually shows trick kit. And it does have what most trick kits do have, and that is non-sticking bowl gaskets, metering block gaskets, and it comes with three different power valves. It's got the centered bronze inlet filters, which I don't know if I'll be using those or not, and new gaskets for the fuel entry on the bowl. And I've got this thing all rebuilt. And I put it back to original specs. In my manual, which is very nice on the Holleys nowadays, and close to the back, there's a page that shows you what all the stock jets are, power valve, and pump nozzle size. So some of that stuff have been changed to work with my Corvette, so I'm changing all back to stock, and this just starting with the base calibration. And I've got this thing all rebuilt. A lot of times the cleaner does dull the finish a little bit, but other than that, really it's good as new. I've done everything on this except for the choke housing, the electric choke housing. I haven't installed that yet, and the reason is I'm going to be installing a throttle position sensor to work with a transmission controller, because I have a 4L80E in my truck. So you need a throttle position sensor to operate that electronic transmission if you're converting over to carburetor. And so I left that off because that TPS sensor works off this main shaft here. So I was going to wait till it came in. It's on back order. But so I went ahead and got the carb all rebuilt and everything. So I was going to talk about the secondaries on a Holley carburetor, and I'll show you a little test that I've done before, just to make sure that they're actually working. I know a lot of people I hear you know, I don't know if my vacuum secondaries are working or not, and because when it's on the car, you really don't feel them come in like you do on a mechanical carb. They come in really smooth, and it should feel just like a pull, and you know, coming on not all at once, and definitely you shouldn't feel a bog. But vacuum secondary carbs really work great, especially with heavy vehicles and automatic transmissions. And this is going in my truck, which weighs about 5,000 pounds, so I think this will work fine. And I've got the original spring in it, which is the silver spring, the one without any paint, which is kind of middle of the road spring, and should make the secondaries come in smoothly. This is a Street Avenger, and it has the quick change vacuum secondary set up here. So all you got to do is take these two screws out. You pull this housing off, and then the spring is on the bottom side. You just swap out that spring to time the secondary opening. Now I was going to show you something. Maybe some of you guys already know this, but how that vacuum secondary motor here gets its signal is from the primary side on this side of the carburetor. I'm going to get my flashlight. I'm going to show you where that comes from. If you look down through the throat of the thing, you'll see a small hole there. There's also a hole down the side of the venturi. I don't know if you can see that or not. That's where the signal gets picked up. And so what happens when the air starts flowing through there, and when the primary barrels are flowing almost to capacity, it builds a signal there at that little hole, and there's a machined hole that runs back here to this area right here, and that signal will build on the top side of that vacuum diaphragm, and we'll start to pull the secondaries open right here. Now that diaphragm, I put in a better one in there. This one here was okay, but I just had a cleaner one I put in there when I rebuilt it. But that's the secondary diaphragm right there. And the quick change really makes them a lot easier to change the spring out, because if you don't, you have to deal with this diaphragm. You have to take the whole lid off of that vacuum motor there. Sometimes it's kind of hard to get that back in there without pinching that diaphragm. And so there's a couple things that, well, there's a few things that will cause your secondaries not to open, and one is a rip in this diaphragm. Two is, which is very rare, for the small hole there to become plugged. See if I can show you that again. You see it there on the top, but there's one there on the side as well. That could become blocked, prevent your secondaries from opening. Also, sometimes on these vacuum secondary carbs, you'll see a hole on this venturi over here. And what that does is bleed some of the signal off. And when the secondaries start to open, it helps balance the signal that goes to the vacuum motor there, and helps smooth out when the secondaries start to open. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you that can cause your secondaries not to open is right here. Here's your secondaries back here. And if you notice, there's a screw right there. And what that screw does, it goes all the way through the body there. And the secondary lever there rests right on that screw. So what the screw does is establish an idle setting for the secondary side, and it holds these throttle plates just open a little bit. If that screw is backed out too much, the throttle butterfly can wedge in the bore and prevent it from opening, especially if you get some carbon built up around them. So you always want to make sure that when you push down on the secondaries, that you can open them by hand and they're not wedging in the bore. If they are, all you have to do is turn this screw clockwise just a little bit just to open the secondaries. And the secondary system on a Holley also has an idle circuit. You notice the slot. That's a transition slot. So when the secondaries start to open, fuel comes out of that slot and prevents a lean spot when they start to open. And that is to get fuel flowing before it actually starts coming out of the boosters. So you have a nice smooth transition. You don't feel a bog or a surge. Okay, now I want to show you a little test that I did on this. I've done them on Holley secondaries, vacuum secondary carbs before. One thing you can do to see if your secondaries are open, you can put a paper clip right here all the way up against the bottom of the housing. Take it for a drive, and then when you come back, if you've opened it up to the floor and run it up through the gears, that paper clip should have moved down on this rod, and you can determine how far and if your secondary is opened. That's one way of doing it on the car. I got a way here that I started doing when I rebuild these things just to make sure they open, and that's with a vacuum cleaner. And all I do is apply a vacuum to the bottom side of the primary here on this side of the carburetor. I open the throttle and I look to see if the secondary butterfly is open. So I'm going to show you that test, and hopefully you'll be able to see it. I'm going to have to put the camera on a tripod. We'll just see how this goes. I don't know if it's going to work. Alright. Adjust it just a tad. Alright. Got my vacuum cleaner. I'm just going to apply a vacuum right here on the primary barrel, on the side, same side as the vacuum secondary motor. I'm going to open the throttle, and you'll see the secondary butterflies open. I might try it this way, and if it doesn't turn out too good, I'll turn it over. Maybe we can see it from the bottom side. So here it goes. I'm going to turn the vacuum on. It's going to be pretty loud. Apply the vacuum with the secondaries closed, the primary throttle closed, and start to open the throttle. You can see the secondaries open. Close it. You see them close. Open it. Okay, now I just turn the carburetor over, demonstrate it again. I think what I'm going to do this time, so I'll just open the throttle. Now you can see the primaries are wide open. I'm going to apply the vacuum and we'll see if the secondary side opens. You can see it does. Close the throttle. Open it. So that's a little test I do sometimes for the secondaries, just make sure they open, which, you know, they are going to open. It's just those few things I mentioned that can cause them not to open. So just check your diaphragm, make sure it's not ruptured, and then also make sure that they're not wedging in the bore, which you just turn that idle screw up a little bit, and that'll prevent that from happening. The other thing you want to watch out for on a Holley secondary is the lower housing here on the secondary motor. A lot of times there'll be a check ball in there, and you don't want to remove that. That's a very important part. What it does is meter air the signal into that chamber, which prevents the secondaries from opening too quickly. And it also is like a check ball that when you release the primary throttle, it allows the secondaries to close down quickly. The ball just unseats, and the the vacuum that's built into the chamber instantly is vented, so it allows the secondaries to close quickly. And there's also a link here that when the secondaries are open, let's just say that you have part throttle here and your secondaries have started to open, then it also, when the primary throttle is closed, it pushes back on the secondary, and that's to just push the secondaries closed. Okay, well that's what I wanted to show you, and then I'll probably make another video on my progress, probably when I start pulling the engine out of the truck. I'm going to see what kind of condition my short block's in, and if it's in pretty good shape I might just put some cylinder heads on it, an intake, put this carburetor on, and one of these HEIs when I get it rebuilt, and just show my progress on my project. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for some more videos.